under a slate sky at the edge of his plowed field. Silas Crow found her, an Apache woman slumped against a surveyor's stake, face beaten, hair knotted with dust and red cloth, a thin strip of canvas nailed above her head stamped with a company brand. Surveyed for the Southern Line. The wooden stake was a declaration of ownership the railroad surveyors claimed before the land had time to remember itself. Around her wrists, the raw skin told of rope. The bruise blooming at her temple was a darker geography. Nearby lay a battered chain and a surveyor's compass, its glass spider-webbed, brass teeth catching a hard, indifferent light. Silas knows the county sheriff's wanted posters by heart, his own face in the corners, a reward that smells like rust and coin. He knows how men who live by other people's rules become the law's enemy. He knows how paper sentences can hang heavier than rope. But the way she is left here, like a parcel of land marked for price, does something to him. It isn't pity, not exactly. It's a recognition he cannot put into words. Another soul thrown away because someone richer thought themselves entitled. He kneels without thinking, the soil giving way to his knees, the old ache in his leg a small thing compared to the ragged time in her face. For a moment they regard each other in silence. Two people cut to the bone by the frontier. She is small, all long angles under a buckskin, dress beaded at the hem with patterns that speak of home, triangles and river lines sewn in faded glass, and she wears moccasins with beadwork in the pattern. His mother might have admired for its patience. Her hair is in two thick braids threaded with bone beads and a single eagle feather, the feather notched where a blow landed. By the medicine pouch at her throat is a small iron bell, its sound silenced by dirt. "Don't," she says, English rough and measured, words chosen like stepping stones. "Don't stand." He drops a hand, palms up as if declaring himself less dangerous than the trail he came from. "I won't hurt you," he says. He doesn't say he can't be trusted to keep his hands to himself. His outlaw hands are made for stealing and breaking locks, but he keeps them visible. She sniffs, eyes narrowing. "You white?" "Used to be," he answers, and she laughs, a small sound that surprises him. It is not a laugh of amusement. It's a laugh that has known how little room there is for anything resembling mercy out here. He thinks of the surveyor's compass, of the nail chewing into the stake as a dentist chews a truth, of the men in buttoned coats who came with measuring chains and a certainty that land without a fence meant land without a people. Survey crews are a different kind of soldier. No uniform, but with power just as blunt. They mark, they map, they turn valleys and mesas into lines on a page for men who will buy them. He strips his duster and lays it under her shoulders. The cloth smells of sweat and smoke, but it's clean by the standards out here. She flinches involuntarily, then relaxes enough to let him lift her. He avoids the open wound by her temple, presses his palm to stop the bleeding, with the rough practiced gentleness of a man who has tied up more than his share of other men's mistakes. "What's your name?" he asks after he bandages her head with a strip torn from his shirt. She studies his face. He is not young. His hair is a dark curtain threaded with gray. His beard is cropped short, a man wary of the wind catching his life near the throat. He has scars that are ordinary on a man who has been in fights, a limp he hides when he can. Silas Crow was once a name that echoed on cattle drives and in dime novels. Stage robber, horse thief, the man who once held up a Wells Fargo under a bad moon. Once, lately, it reads like a ghost on sheriff paper. She, Auhini? She says finally in a word that he doesn't understand. She modifies it, Nika, she says slowly in English, then nods as if translating for him and herself. Nika. He nods once, committing the syllable. The name fits her like a grown-in thing. He bowls a hand through his hair, feeling the outline of the barbed wire ridge along his jaw. "Silas," he says. "Silas Crow." She touches the beadwork at her chest as if to remind herself where she sits on the map of her life. "You take me?" He squats and slings her over his shoulder like he has thrown backpacks, horses, and once, years ago, a man who'd been left for dead under a juniper. He doesn't consider the bounty, the posse that might be riding out of town for his head. He considers only that her breath smells faintly of sweet pine and fever, and that she is alive. He should not, as an outlaw, be investing himself in anyone else's life. But Silas has a strange contempt for certain kinds of law, those that convert people into property. He decides to take her home. They move like shadows in long grass, far off, or perhaps only a mile away. The silhouettes of survey flags flutter red as small fleeing things in the late light. The surveyor's camp is not quiet. Men laugh sometimes and curse others. A stack of fence posts near the ridge tells the same story as the stake. Someone has decided the land belongs on paper and not to the people who live by the rivers. Silas's cabin is a square of stubborn wood clinging to a gully where the river slows and the cottonwoods leave their leaves to the earth. Smells of tobacco, coffee, and the iron tin of his tools. He lays Nika on his only bed, strips off the bandage enough to check her wound, and hums a tune his mother once sang while he stitches. He uses whiskey to wash the wound, a bastard of necessity, and then presses herbs from a tin he'd kept since his grandmother gave him a small wound-salving recipe. He lights a lamp whose oil smells like a kitchen gone to sleep. She watches him with an appraising eye, the way someone who has lived on the land watches a man who is learning his edges. "Why did they leave you?" he asks. She looks away. The moonlight catches on a scar at her temple that blooms white like a crescent. "They said it's land for the line. They brought chains. They cut where the creek bends," my people argued. "The agent," she spits the word like a stone. "Agent said the Apache must move. He said the survey says so. These surveyors, they took our jars, our ropes, then they laughed. When my cousin objected, one of the men struck him. We ran. They caught me at the creek." Silas has heard similar stories, the paper songs of moving people, the cold calculus of railroad companies, the way a map could turn a family into squatters overnight. He feels a rage like a wound opening in his chest. But tonight he keeps it where it can be useful, cold and bright like a blade. "You spoke their name for them," he says softly. "You said agent," she nods once. "Agent Holloway." He bought copper with a grin. The soldiers called it order. The word soldiers is a different thing than surveyors. It means men with boots and letters and a government that decides where treaties live. She closes her eyes. "My father," she starts and the breath catches. He waits. The night is full of insect songs and the low thud of a distant carriage. Could be a surveyor's wagon, could be a rancher. In the corner, a wanted poster flutters. Silas's face staring back like a portrait of shame. He has been chasing something less likely to forgive him. A chance to be less like the men who leave others behind. In the morning, she is not where he left her. He panics for a heartbeat, then he finds her outside. She has left the medicine pouch unfastened on her chest, and she is weaving small braids of the dockweed that grows along the river. Her moccasins pat the dirt with the soft surety of someone whose feet know the land intimately. "Walk," she says. He follows, and they move slowly toward where the river narrows and the willow bends. The surveyor's flags flap closer. In the sky, the sun makes a promise of hard heat. They are not yet hunted by the cavalry, but flags are a kind of drumbeat. The distance, men ride hard, dust pluming like smoke. He thinks of running, of slipping off into the Badlands with her over his shoulder. But running is a small thing. He offers her what he owns, meat from his smokehouse, coffee, a blanket woven in patterns that mean little to Apache eyes but are warm anyway. She eats like someone who has been without certain kinds of food for a long time, slowly, gratefully, with a reserve. She watches him as she eats, cataloging him like a mapmaker might catalog a ridge, noting small things, the way his hands tremble when he jokes, how he keeps the door unlocked even when he leaves. They share the history in dribs and pieces, stories moved like pebbles upstream. The surveyors came with promises of work and rails and later, opportunity. They came with the confidence of men who read contracts and believed those contracts were right. Agent Holloway had persuaded the county to sign an easement. The soldiers were there to keep peace. His word, not Silas's. When the Apache people resisted, soldiers beat, surveyors scoffed, and the agent smiled between business deals. Nika was seized as a message. Move or be made to move. Silas hears memories of his own past in the way the men justify themselves. Once, years ago, he'd been with a gang that took stagecoaches and redistributed other people's safety. He'd been good at picking locks and noticing where a lawman kept his pistol. He'd been blind to other people's claims to land and life when it was in the way of his payday. He had been caught, framed for murder by a man with a clean collar and a soft mouth. He'd watched his family, those moments that defined a life, fall apart as a sheriff's badge turned reality into smaller pieces. Now, watching Nika take tobacco smoke and sun like a person who belongs to the ground, he feels his guilt as a thing that could be put to use. He owes something not to a badge but to a wrong, made by people loud with certificates. They find a way to communicate that is mostly not words. He learns to read the expression in the beadwork at her hem. She learns his flinches. She murmurs words in Chiricahua Apache that he cannot repeat, but he repeats them anyway until her smile is a small, guarded thing in return. She teaches him Ndi, she says slowly. Ndi the people, your ND, he asks, fumbling the syllable. She corrects him with a gentleness that surprises him. Ndi, we say it for our people. When you say it, you remember others. He practices until the sound is less foreign on his tongue. He can't promise to ever fully understand the cadence of a life braided into land, but he can learn to listen. She shows him a small scratch on the inside of her wrist, tattooed with ash, a sign of her clan's name. She points to a bead sequence and tells him in a voice like the wind through tall grass what each shape meant. Water, matriarch, hunter. Her words are few, but each one is a map. He begins to share stories of his own, careful ones that reveal the distance between the man who robs and the man who makes shelter. He tells her about his mother, how she braided his hair once and gave him a bead like hers, about a younger brother who died with a fever when Silas had not the money for medicine. He speaks of a last robbery that had made him infamous. We took a bank when the moon was thin, he admits, not proud. I meant to get a share and vanish. The shot, he stops. The scar at his temple, a lighter line, traces as testimony. They hung it on me, he says. So you are hunted like the horses, she says, and there's no scorn. You know the sharp taste. That night, a rider appears at the rim of the cottonwoods, silhouette like a question. Silas recognizes the uniform, a sergeant's braid at the shoulder, and his hands go cold. The cavalry is not the surveyor's crew. They are an instrument with orders. The man looks as if he has been sleeping on a bed of maps, and the taste of authority still hangs in his mouth. He rides down and calls out, "You Crow?" Silence shows guilt. Silas steps forward, and the sergeant's eyes take in the sweep of the cabin, the bandage at Nika's temple. The sergeant does not know what to do with that view. He is trained to see only two things, the law and an unruly land. He asks soft questions and speaks of the agent's orders. There's an Apache woman nearby, the sergeant says finally, as if reading from a ledger. Was she with you? Silas trusts the way the sergeant counts. He has little use for soldiers, yet he knows how to match their measure. He shrugs a slow, deliberate motion. Found her on the stake, he says. Surveyors left her, the man frowns. You can't harbor, can't carry your orders in a pocket till wind takes them, Silas mutters. She's hurt. The sergeant studies him and then, after a long pause, tips his hat and rides off. He is one of those rare men who will look at a wound before a warrant. He is not an ally. He is a man with a conscience that has not been entirely smothered by a uniform. Nika heals slowly. The scar at her temple knits unevenly. The wall of muscle recedes, leaving a pale crescent like a shell. She walks the banks of the river and traces lines where her people once camped, telling Silas of names that will not be found on any map the surveyors hold. We used to dry corn here, she whispers once, pointing to a flat rock. My aunt sang to the water. The men with chains cut our jars and said the creek would bend for their tracks. Silas listens. He sees how she wears mourning and resilience like two layers of clothing. When she speaks in Apache, she sometimes tucks phrases into his hands like small tools. She says "Ndi" again, this time with the softness of someone reminding him he belongs to none, then to many. She teaches him a phrase, "Jiwa," she says, and translates it. Be careful, which is both literal and a curse of love in the same breath. Their days fold into each other. He shows her how to mend a fence, how to smoke meat in a cedar box to keep it from spoiling, how to make a coffee that tastes like broken light. She shows him how to find clean water under the wrong-looking ground, how to read the trails of animals, and how to tie a medicine knot in the pouch at his own throat when the nights come too long. They move like two halves of a coin, rediscovering the other. Silas's past is not a quiet thing. Once, years before, a posse had come into the valley after a postmaster had been slapped in a broad daylight ambush. The sheriff's men had traced the deed to a man with Silas's build and the wrong hat. Silas paid the price of a scapegoat. He had watched the law write him in letters. That legacy sits in the cabin like smoke, persistent. Nika asks one evening, staring into the fire, "Why did you take me in?" He looks at the rising sparks, thinking hard. "I hated how they marked you," he says finally. "The way a man can point a stake and say, 'This is mine,' it makes me sick. I know what it is to be something someone takes. Maybe I wanted to be less of that." Her eyes are unreadable, but a faint light touches them. "We do not ask much," she says in Apache, then in English, "but we do ask for truth. He is not always good at truth. He hides records in false bottoms and keeps watch in case men with ledgers and a thirst for reward come looking. His limp is worse some days. There are nights when he wakes with his train of decisions running through him and sees the name of the man who framed him in the ghost of a ledger. He is tempted to take the vengeance and burn it like a hunted man might burn a map. Word arrives on drifted wind. The surveyors need to stake the next section of line, and the agent wants the land clear. A small posse of local men who swapped ranches for profit and called Apache resistance a nuisance, have answers to problems that involve no more thinking than a pistol. They are the kind of men who make trade with their consciences and pay in small coin. Silas knows the risk. He also knows that if he runs, Nika will be left like the stake with its nail above her head. The law will not listen to the kind of wrong that involves a branded stamp and a claim. The surveyor's chain and the agent's authority will outrank the truth of her family's fire pits. He makes a decision that is both humane and hopeless. He will fight for her like a man needs to fight when paper and men try to fold people into lines. It ends up that a bounty hunter arrives first, an old associate of his named Pike Doyle, who once rode with him and now rides for coin and whatever justice he can buy. Pike smells of old whiskey and regrets. He carries a ledger with names and rewards and the look of a man who has learned to sell his own face for advantage. "Silas," Pike says, stepping into the cabin's doorway like a judge, "you owe me." Silas watches the way Pike's eyes flick toward Nika. Pike is a little too comfortable with other people's damage. His "do you owe me" is a soft lever. "I owe you nothing," Silas says. "But there are things owed to people who cannot pay with coin." Pike laughs like a millstone. "You always did have a soft place for lost things." He'll trade the soft spot for a price, Silas thinks, and he feels the cold settling. He has made mistakes that can be counted, debts still owed, but some debts are different. There's a rule in his head older than badges. You do not let those who mark land with stake and thread take women like a proof. The days swell until the tension is nearly a thing you could cut with a knife. The survey crew returns with chains. The agent rides with a swagger as if his boots could force a creek to bend. A handful of soldiers edge the operation to a sheen of official, like a coin worth twice as much. "Move," the agent tells the Apache who have gathered along the east bank. His name is Holloway, the same the woman had told him. He has the same smile that puts a cost on people's faces and finds the number agreeable. Nika stands among her people, some men, some women, older folk, wearing her braids like a banner. She does not look like a victim. She looks like someone who has been left with the burden of choosing how to bend. The agent offers them a contract, written in the language of men who make borders. "We offer payment or a new place. The law requires," he says. "The survey must go through." "Who paid you?" Nika asks. Her voice is clear and belongs to no one but herself. "Who signed?" "Men of the company," the agent answers with a businessman's distance. "And the county. This is a lawful claim." There is laughter at the word lawful. It has a taste of ash. One old woman spits onto the ground. "They call their paper the river now," she says. Silas watches the negotiations and knows he cannot stand in a crowd of maps without losing his mercy to the rope. The sheriff's proclamation is a paper sun, burning only where its heat is felt by coin and muscle. The men with chains continue to mark. The soldiers stand like iron teeth. When the men with chains step too close, when hands reach for jars that have been in families since before the surveyors knew how to spell profit, One of the younger Apache men lashes out. A fist cracks into a surveyor's jaw. The fight is quick, an ugly thing of boots and thrown things. Agent Holloway calls for soldiers. A soldier hits back harder. A man falls, a woman screams. Men are mounted, ropes swing, threats are exchanged. The land, which had been listening, starts to seethe. Silas pushes forward in the press, not to be brave, but because he recognizes a moment where violence could go either way and tips it. He hears a rifle click, sees the flash of a pistol aimed at a child's back. He does what he knows best. He uses his outlaw hands like maps, slapping a man's wrist, pulling a rifle, using a chain to tangle a horse. He does not shoot first. He uses movement and surprise and a will to stop a child's skin from breaking open. In the crush, Nika is grabbed by a surveyor who is drunk on perceived entitlement. Silas sees and moves. He throws himself between the man and Nika, a man who has been a thief of safes now guarding a woman like a vault. The surveyor hits him in the ribs and the air leaves his lungs with a complaint. But he throws the man off the woman, and in the scuffle, the chain that once marked the creek snaps and the men tumble like carved wood. The cavalry arrives with orders and complexity. They face an angry set of people and a man they know by poster and history. Their captain looks like someone who has been trained to believe in order with a capital O. He rides to the front and raises a hand. "Everyone down," he orders, voice like a hammer. He speaks of arrest and of law, of preserving peace. He speaks of the county's right to survey. He has the air of one who believes the state makes the world legible. But in the press, there's a moment where choice surfaces like a rock in a stream. The captain sees Nika, realizes the face of a woman who is beaten is not the same as a wanted poster. He hovers between a job and a conscience with the awkwardness of a man who hasn't decided who he wants to be. "Take the men who've turned violent," the captain asks. And then for a second he looks at Silas and sees that the man's instinct wasn't to break but to protect. "Crow, is it?" Silas nods, breathless. He is still a wanted man. The captain could pull the rope. The captain could turn him over. "You have a choice," the captain says. "Walk and be delivered to the county, or let us take you now." Silas looks at Nika, at the beadwork, the scar, the way her jaw is clenched. He thinks of the posse that once took his name and smeared it into a story the law liked to tell. He thinks of a different currency, the currency of keeping someone from harm. He nods. "I'm not going to run," he says. "Not this one." The captain studies him like a man reading an unfamiliar script. There is a beating pause. Then the captain gestures. "We will take the agent and the surveyor down to the fort for questioning," he says. "And we'll accompany you all to the county. We won't hang you here, but there will be process. It is a fragile thing. A process that might mean more courts and more hearings and perhaps a worse thing. But it is also an official hand that keeps a rope from people who don't deserve one." That night, the throw of events, Nika is taken not by guns, but by the band of her people to a place farther down the river, where the rocks make a bowl, and the water is clear. She speaks softly to Silas before she goes, in a mixture of Apache and English. "You have opened the door, Silas Crow. Not all men do that." He watches her go with the rest of her people. He is taken to a camp where the soldiers make lists and Agent Holloway gets to fume, which suits him well. Silas is questioned, his past laid out on the captain's table like an accusing deck. He answers with honest fragments and softer lies. He does not go quietly when the sheriff sends a courier later with a warrant. He pays his dues where he must and does not go quietly where he should not. But nothing in the law can undo the way Nika's people have been reduced to lines on a page. The agent will not be entirely punished for the ease with which he converts a people into coordinates. Men of business usually pay an apology or in money that never means anything to the people it steals. The captain does his best. He sees human faces where his orders had meant to see only maps. He is not a saint. He is capable of making mistakes. He is human. He is also functional in a world that prizes order. Silas finds himself in a position for once of choosing to act within the shape of law's faint mercy. He testifies when called, his voice a rough instrument. He says the surveyors beat Nika and threatened the village. He says Agent Holloway coerced signatures with guns and promises. He says he is wanted once, but here he calls attention to a wrong that cannot be ignored by a ledger. The captain uses his voice to create space where law might find justice, or at least a definition of wrongdoing that is inconvenient to rich men. But injustice is a clever animal. Holloway has friends. There are rumors, quiet things that men with vested interests will smooth the road for their man. The county is a place where the lines on paper sometimes sing a different song when a ledger pays the singer. Nika does not appear at the hearings. She has been taken to the bowl by her people to consider their next step, fight for the places of their ancestors, or move on for the sake of safety. They are tired of being asked to be small for the comfort of other men. Her voice drifts to Silas in fragments. "We must survive," she says. But survival is not surrender. Silas does not know what will happen to him. He is waiting for the jury's angle, waiting for the sheriff to tie his life into a sentence. But in the quiet spaces between hearings, they write to each other in ways older than papers. Small gifts left on stones, messages carved into wood. She sends him a bead of her tribe's pattern. He sends her a parcel of coffee. The exchange is like a stitch. Time in the frontier is elastic. Weeks fold into a kind of long breath. He expects vindication to be a neat thing. It is not. A courthouse finds reasons to push the bigger questions off the docket. Agent Holloway keeps money and acquittals like spoils. The captain is transferred. The county listens politely and then finds that legalities are slippery. Silas grows angrier, not at one man but at the way systems bend. He is tempted to revert to the old instincts, guns and a faster life. Nika fears for him. She has seen men consumed by instruments of vengeance before. She knows the difference between righteous anger and hunger. "You will not trade yourself for what men own," she tells him once in a voice like coals. There are other ways. He nods, but his hands twitch toward the old maps, the ones with rail lines and with the county ledger. He calls up men he used to know, people who trade favors for favors. He ropes them into a plan to steal documents from the agent's office, papers that would show who paid Holloway and under what pretenses. He wants the truth to be light enough to burn through a bad contract. At first they are small thefts, letters left under a pillow, a ledger tucked into a coat. It is the old life in new cause. He rationalizes. A life of stealing for greed is not the same as stealing to return something taken unjustly. He tries to make the law feel like a flexible thing, easy to shape if he is the one holding the hammer. Nika sees the change like a slow tide. She watches him wrap himself in the mantle of his former self, and she does not let him wear it without comment. She sits next to the fire one night and braids his hair, an Apache woman's way of focusing warm hands on something a man thinks is hardened. "Your hands are the same," she says. "They can take. Or they can give. Each knot you make will hold a choice." He listens and finds his choices like branches, dangerous ones and ones that could lead to a calmer shore. He decides to plan a gambit that will not burn people for his past. It will expose a man with too many friends. He contacts a man in the county who is a friend of Holloway's, but also a man who drinks too much and talks in his sleep. Silas buys him whiskey, listens while the friend babbles and learns enough to build a map of corruption. He bribes a clerk to copy contracts into his own hands. He practices lockpicking again and slashes a ledger into a pocket where it will be found by men who want to read the truth. But schemes have a nature of their own. Pike Doyle, sensing a chance at a reward, moves in like a vulture. He has a new idea. Turn Silas in along with the evidence and watch the county decide. It is a betrayal that smells like old wine. Silas is not naive. He knows that men like Pike will change their colors with a coin. Yet the sting of betrayal still surprises him because it arrives from a familiar place. When Pike's betrayal comes, it is in the form of a horse ride at sunset, gloves tucked, and the sheriff's men in tow. They sweep into the cabin as if they have rights. In the flurry, Nika is separated from Silas. Hands grab for her. Thinking a woman is an easy prize to display as proof, Silas fights hard. He is not a man to be taken for nothing. And in the melee, a shot rings out. In the confusion, someone falls. Not Silas, not Pike. Someone else. A lean man who used to help on Silas's farm, a mentor who had taught him how to stitch and smoke meat and prefer the world not to burn. He was protective in an old way, and had once bailed Silas out of a fight. He saves another and pays with his life. The cabin smells like smoke and blood, and the iron tang of grief. Nika screams and runs, and in the frenzy she is taken by soldiers who think to present her as evidence, as a dangerous woman turned violent. They brand her with an accusation she did not earn. Words in a ledger that read, "Instigator." The county wants a display to show the frontier in order. Silas feels the world cleave in two. He has known the ache of blame. He knows now how thin the line is between doing the law's bidding and being owned by it. The mentor's death is a pivot. It makes choices impossible to unchoose. He is forced into a corner where the old skill set is the only one that will cut. He makes a desperate gambit. Silas uses old contacts, the men who owe him favors, and the women who forgave him for quicker things. He assembles a plan that is a map of his sins and his past good intentions. He will not only steal back the documents, he will break into the county strongroom, expose Holloway, and set Nika free from the sheriff's hands. It is a plan that requires him to become what men say he was, a thief, to undo the crimes of men with white collars. He also knows the risk. The final act could cost his freedom or his life. But the mentor's body and Nika's shackled hands stand like a pulse in his throat. Nika, for her part, is not idle. The Apache ways are not passive. In the night, elders come and speak in low voices. They send him instructions in the language of trails, the sound of wind through stones that mean roots, places where men can hide, how to move like water. She makes small offerings and asks the spirits for guidance. This is not a plea for magic, but a recognition of connection to land and to the ancestors who watched over those trails. She recites phrases that are both prayer and instruction. "Ndi," she says, tugging at the beadwork. "We are here." He uses the knowledge of his outlaw years, disguises, forgeries, the old tricks of the trade. The plan moves like a careful tide. He distracts Pike with a false lead, slips through a back window, and finds the ledger in a chest of a room where the agent keeps his evidence. It is heavy with signatures and deeds and the names of men who own other men's lives with deeds and money. As Silas lifts the ledger, the sheriff's lamp lights up behind him. He freezes. He could be taken. He could be lynched. He is not. It turns out the captain who had once questioned him is there. Older, edges softened by duty. And he gives Silas a look that is almost, in its way, permission. The captain had been sitting with truth and had chosen quietly to do what the law sometimes does not. He had been listening. He does not arrest Silas at that moment. He steps aside and lets the man do what must be done. The escape is violent and messy. Men pursue with dogs and revolvers. Silas runs with the ledger tucked into his coat, proof of a plan and proof of a theft. He rides hard. The horses flank a drumbeat in his memory. He feels that familiar old heat of being chased. At the river bend, Nika and a band of her people are waiting, silent and like shadowed oars. They cut their ropes and free her. She moves like a woman who has learned to make a plan that is not only about running, but about reclaiming. They flee into a canyon where maps stop and the land remembers itself. There they hold. They read the ledger in the firelight and see the signatures of men who had profited. They decide to carry a different kind of justice. Not the rope, not the noose, but the exposure. The ledger will make a sound in the county that cannot be muffled easily. But betrayals come like rain. Pike, humiliated and enraged, offers a deal to Holloway. Turn in the ledger and collect the reward. The agent, desperate, sees in this a way to cover the tracks with a rope. He is not simply a paper man. He is someone who believes that tradition and profit must be preserved. He decides to use the law as a hammer. The final confrontation occurs in the canyon at dawn. The agent has a posse, the sheriff, 2 soldiers, a group of surveyor men with rifles, and Pike at the center. Nika stands with her people, warriors not of the filmic stereotype but of reality. Defenders who know the land, who read the wind and the sky. They do not wear war paint as a costume. They wear beaded sashes that tell family lines. They are not vengeful shadows. They are exacting and fierce. Silas stands by Nika, the ledger heavy in his satchel. He knows that if this fails, the ledger will be a testimony in his pocket, and life will be a shorter story. But he also knows that there is a kind of courage not born of law, but of love. The men exchange words, and the agent laughs in a way meant to be final. "You have a choice," Holloway says, like a judge. Nika answers him, her voice a river shifted over stone. "You have made your choice," she says in Chiricahua Apache, and then in English, slow and deliberate. "You chose to sell our land. The clash that follows is ugly and honest. Silas is no stranger to violence, but he is not a man who loves it. He uses his outlaw skill to throw a rope, to trip a man, to protect Nika like a shield. The Apache use their knowledge of land like a weapon. They move through the stones, they call to the birds. They weave between the men like wind. The captain, who once hesitated, fights with a resolve that looks like regret made solid. It is Pike who falls first, not killed, but disarmed and mistaking his fall for destiny. Holloway fights like a man who has nothing left to lose. The agent's last friend is the law that will keep him whole. But the ledger is in the open now, wet under the firelight, and a soldier reads it and then another, and they pass glances that are not all carved in the same way. Men with uniforms are still men with consciences. In the end, the ledger is shown, read aloud by a voice that cannot be dismissed as a hoot, and the signatures are names like nails. The county cannot simply ignore it without its own sense of order being questioned. The captain speaks again, carrying the weight of a man who has seen both sides, and he orders Holloway detained. There is crying, and then there is a kind of legal unspooling, where papers are read and men who had thought themselves untouchable taste a little shame. Silas is wounded in the fight, a shallow cut across his cheek, a bruise on his ribs, and his hands shake as he bandages near a fire. Nika tends him without hesitation, wrapping his shirt around the wound, pressing with the same careful gentleness he once used on her. Her touch is not melodrama. It is pragmatic and necessary. She speaks a few words in Chiricahua Apache and then in English. "You risked yourself for truth." He laughs, a weary thing. "Seems a poor exchange," he says. "But it will do. They do not vanish into some romanticized horizon. Redemption is not a clean thing, it's messy and earned. The county convicts Holloway of corruption. The men who took the jars are fined and made to return what they can. The captain testifies and is transferred with honors somewhere that gives him a chance to be better. Pike is jailed for attempted robbery and betrayal. The ledger becomes proof. Papers are read. Men are made accountable. It is not an ending to all injustice, but it is a dent where the law once enjoyed being a hammer. Nika's people are offered accommodations. The county cannot strip an entire people without consequences when documents reveal the motive for taking. The railroad's plan is stalled and rerouted, at least for a season, by public pressure spurred by the ledger's exposure. Some land is restored. Jars are returned when possible. It is small. It is not everything. In the weeks that follow, Silas and Nika build something that is both fragile and real. He is still a wanted man in some parts and still carries the record of old deeds. But the ledger has shifted the county's story in small ways. Some men still look at him as a known criminal. Others look at him with a curiosity that borders on respect. The captain grants him a reprieve in return for continued testimony if needed. The community, paper thin in its empathy, slowly stitches a seam that includes Nika's people. They do not marry in a church or in a judge's office. They make a pact in the open air, in the way people of the land do. Nika places a small bead necklace in Silas's hand, a bead from her clan pattern, and he places in her hand a knife he'd sharpened himself. With a handle wrapped in red cloth, it is not a costume of romance. It's a trade of souls. He learns more Apache words. She instructs him in the way to sit with silence, to be a man who listens. She teaches him hajini, a misheard word perhaps, but she says it as stay with me. And he tries to keep it. He learns Ndi more intimately, understands that it holds both grief and ground. He says a phrase she gives him many nights. Ndi, she tells him, then translates it, my people. He says it wrong at first and then better, and the sound of it softens him. Nika never becomes a prize in his story. She is not a device that reforms the white man. She is a woman with agency. She decides, in a measured way, to live near the river that once sustained her people. She gathers the elders and her brothers, and they settle in a place where the surveyor's flags cannot hold against community. They teach children how to tie the right knot for fishing, and how to read the land like a book. Silas helps build fences where they need them, and digs a well where their labor finds water. There is a quiet scene, months later. They are sitting on a ridge, watching the land wake with a gold dawn. She braids his hair, no longer with pity but with a domestic ritual that looks like partnership. He braids the fringe of her blanket with careful hands. Around them, the valley breathes. The railroad trains are still a rumor in the distance, and sometimes men with suits come up the road. They are not all enemies. Some come to ask for work. Some come to apologize with pockets that will never repair the past. They accept the work that is honest and tend the land that accepts them both. The past is not gone. Silas receives letters once in a while, warrants that ancient men will not entirely forget. But the ledger's exposure bought him time, and the captain has spoken in his favor enough that many hatreds cool. His old gang is scattered. Some are dead, some are jailed. Pike rots behind bars, and Silas's name in the papers changes from criminal to a man of complexity, who sometimes will bend the rules for better ends. He learns to live with the cost of that compromise. Nika becomes a bridge. She teaches children both Apache songs and a few English words because language is a tool, and tools are good. She heals with practices that are older than doctrine. She uses herbs, raps, and her knowledge of how the land speaks pain, and she shares those with other women. She never gives up the idea that her people have a right to be more than a footnote in a county plan. Their love is not a sudden blaze, but an ember they tend. There are nights when he wakes seeing the mentor's face, and there's been arguing sometimes about how to teach children about borders. They have hard conversations about identity, and the way that both of them come from histories that do not easily reconcile, but their lives intertwine in the ordinary things, coaxing a calf into life, plucking rattles out of a broken fence post, learning to play a song on a harmonica Nika prefers because its smallness takes up no space. Time folds once again, and then they have a child, an agreement between two people who had been broken in different ways. The baby is named Twee in their speech, Small River, though he is given an English name at the county clerk's request. They keep the bead pattern on a necklace and a ring of twisted wire that had once been part of a stagecoach harness as a token. The child learns two tongues and grows with a kind of cultural double vision that will shape him. The county grumbles and then forgets to gossip. Life is a work in progress. Silas Crow becomes, in a way, what he'd least expected. A protector of a patch of land where two stories cross without one swallowing the other. He teaches his son to read a ledger, not for the lies of it, but to know how to spot the falsehoods on paper. Nika teaches the child to track a rabbit and to read the stars for messages they do not write. They are not forgiven by everyone. Some men never learn. Some laws take a lifetime to change, but they are given room to live. Years later, they stand together on the ridge where he had found her 4 seasons before. The box of the surveyor's stake long gone, and the wooden sign recycled into something useful. The valley runs like a worn story beneath them. The child runs his hand through reeds and looks up at the two adults who had once been only dangerous and wounded. Silas takes Nika's hand, the scar at his cheek a pale line like a closed ridge, and she squeezes in a way that says both claim and belonging. They have both been remade, not by a single redemptive moment, but by the patient work of sewing a life where there had been only a map. She places a small bead in the hollow of his palm, the bead she once gave him when the ledger was a secret, and the world was a narrower thing. For the water, she says. For the people. For the ledger, he says, and then smiles. 4 second chances. They have learned the hard arithmetic of living where the law sometimes fails, but love persists. The frontier is a place of rough weather and rougher men. It has a habit of taking more than it gives. Yet here, in a valley that remembers the footfalls of those who lived before surveyor flags and company brands, two people who were once thrown away have built a home. It is not perfect. It is not a morality play. It is, instead, a life reconciled to the bone. The final image is simple. Silas and Nika standing at the river, the child skipping stones, the cottonwoods whispering the names of those who came before them. The sun dips low, painting the mesas in a promise that is not easily kept but is always possible. They stand together, sure of the ground under their feet, and the land seems to accept them back. And so their story ends where ours continues, in a time when the law protected the powerful and persecuted the innocent. When love across cultures was deemed criminal, two hunted souls found freedom in each other's arms and in the patient rebuilding of a place that had tried to erase them. If tales like these speak to your heart, if you believe love can bridge any divide and heal any wound, then you found your home on the frontier. Subscribe to Outlaw Love Stories to witness more legends where justice failed but hearts prevailed, where stories defy the law but honor love. Like this story, share it with those who believe in second chances, and turn on notifications, because every week, the Wild West delivers another tale of forbidden love, dangerous redemption, and the courage to defy everything for the one who matters most. The frontier's still got stories to tell, partner, and every one of them just might change your heart forever. Leave a comment below. Tell us which moment moved you, which line you felt in your bones, and we'll bring you another legend next week.